Welcome to Lesson 4, the concluding lesson in the course on communication proficiency. In this lesson, we intend to look at leadership from a communication perspective. Understanding the relationship between leadership and communication is very essential, and this is what we're going to be looking at in this model. The reflection for this lesson will be from Esther chapter 8, verse 14. Esther chapter 8, verse 14, and that will be from the New American Standard Bible, 1995 version. It reads, and I quote, "The couriers, hastened and impelled by the king's command, went out riding on the royal steeds, and the decree was given out at the citadel in Susa." It is very important to note that leadership is first and foremost a communication-based activity. Now, I repeat, leadership is first and foremost a communication-based activity. Leaders invest substantial amount of their time in preparing messages for the people they lead. The more leadership responsibility a person has, the more the need for the leader to communicate. This is very critical. Engaging followers using stories effectively, tactfully deploying their emotions, responding appropriately to the emotions of others, and creating desired impressions are traits of highly competent leaders. So it is important to know that communication is a core assignment. The ability rather to communicate proficiently is a core role of strategic leaders. Thus, communicating effectively is a core assignment of leaders. Leaders must demonstrate the willingness to communicate. Their willingness is shown by an eagerness to interact with others and in developing effective communication skills. So the leaders must not only be eager to interact with the people who follow them, they should also express keen willingness to consistently develop their effective communication skills. Communication professor James McCroskey and Virginia Richmond developed a tool to measure the predisposition to talk in a variety of scenarios. And that tool they tagged the willingness to communicate scale. They named that tool the willingness to communicate scale. Before proceeding in this lesson, I will recommend that you pause a few minutes to take the willingness to communicate scale that was developed by James McCroskey and Virginia Richmond. You can download this scale as in PDF. It's attached to this model. And you can download it and take some few minutes to just go over the scale. You'll find out that high WTCs are viewed as more credible and attractive. They are usually recognized as opinion leaders. The willingness communicators are classified as competent communicators. They stand out in the way they are able to use humor to pass across their message. And so just for the norms for the willingness to communicate scores, group discussion greater than 89, that's high, and also if it's less than 57, that is low. For meetings greater than 80, that's a high willingness, to communicate skill, and less than 39, that is classified as low. For interpersonal conversations, if you score 80, 94 and higher, that is considered high. 64 and lower, that is considered low. In public speaking, if you score 78 and higher, that's considered high. And if you score 33 and lower, that is considered low. And from being able to interact with strangers, 63 is a high and 18 is a low. And then the ability to connect well with acquaintances, if you have 92, that and above that is high, and if it's below 57, that's a low. Then the ability to communicate with friends, if you have 99 and above, that's high, and less than 71, that is low. And then for the overall total, if you have over 82, it's considered high, and less than 52 is low. So it takes a few minutes and go through the willingness to communicate skill that is attached on this model. Thank you. Welcome back, and I hope you did take the willingness to communicate skill and hope you found some interesting discoveries. Now, to proceed further, successful leaders effectively utilize emotions at 5 different levels. Successful leaders, leaders who succeed in what they do, are able to utilize emotions at 5 different levels. Level 1, that they are able to communicate within themselves as a person. Level 2, ability to express emotion between persons. Level 3 is the interpersonal level. Level 4 is at the group level, and level 5 is at the organizational level. Leaders succeed to the extent they can integrate emotions and their cognition. So this is important. Leaders who succeed at what they do are able to integrate their emotions across these 5 levels and also apply their cognition. Leaders cannot afford to be emotionally illiterate. This is very cogent. Emotional cognitivism begins with the ability to identify, evaluate, and express emotional states. Leaders need to work on limiting their emotional blind spots. This is important. Emotional intelligence demands knowing how to identify where we are emotionally and how to express affection to others. So, this is important. EI, as it's known, emotional intelligence, demands that leaders know how to identify where they are at emotionally and how to express their emotions effectively to the people they follow. In other words, when a leader is angry, he needs to know how to control their temper in a way that they are still able to preserve their credibility as leaders. And this is very important. Taking heed to the emotional state of followers is critical to leadership. Those in leadership should understand the feelings of the people who follow them so that they are able to connect effectively with them. Until people know how much their leaders care, they are not going to do what their leaders want them to do. People don't just want to know how much we know, they want to know how much we care first. And this is important in leadership. So, for instance, a team leader who does not realize that team members feel overworked and discouraged, but keeps concentrating on pushing them to do more, will not get the desired results. And as such, a leader is apparently out of touch with the team. So, the easiest way to be out of touch with the team is for leaders not to be in touch with the emotional state of the people that they lead. We cannot deny the fact that emotions play a role in decision making. The truth is that the emotional state of the leader, the followers, influence decision making. For example, good moods encourage creative thinking and innovativeness, while bad moods retard the process of decision making. Emotionally intelligent leaders know how to reconcile moods with the prevailing circumstances. They also know how not to get carried away and how not to ignore risks when in a good mood. And also, they try not to be too critical when they are feeling pessimistic. Allowing emotions to facilitate thinking means channeling feelings in order to reach desired goals. So, allowing emotions to facilitate thinking involves being able to harness, taking charge of our feelings so as to be able to achieve the desired goals. Leaders must be able to describe what they feel and recognize the relationship between what they feel and ongoing issues and circumstances. For example, irritation and annoyance lead to anger and rage. Again, surprise is not an emotion that stands alone. It usually tags along with another emotion like happiness, disappointment, or anger. Understanding these dynamics can make a huge difference to the effectiveness of a leader. So it is important that leaders need to know how to describe what they feel and how to recognize the relationship between what they are feeling and ongoing issues and circumstances around them. Furthermore, emotional competence requires that leaders can regulate their emotions and that of the people they lead. That means they are able to create the feelings they desire in themselves and in others. It demands that they are aware of emotional contagion, the fact that emotions of one person can quickly be adopted by others. So because they are aware of that, you know, to be emotionally competent as a leader requires being able to regulate the emotion of the people that follow them. Or put it better this way, emotional competence is the ability that leaders have to be able to regulate the overall emotional feeling within the team or organizations they lead. There are various communication styles, and it's important to know that communication styles determines a leader's effectiveness. The communication style that a leader selects contributes to the success or failure of any attempt to exert influence. Research provides two basic models of communication. The model that compares authoritarian, democratic, and laissez-faire styles of leadership communication, and another model that contrasts task and interpersonal leadership communication. And we're going to be looking at that in the next session. In this subsection, we'll be looking at the first model, which compares authoritarian style of leadership with democratic style of leadership and the laissez-faire style of leadership communication. Authoritarian leadership communication style exhibit the following characteristics, according to Johnson and Hackman, 2018. They set goals individually. They also control the discussion with followers. The authoritarian leadership communication style sets policy and procedures unilaterally. It also goes ahead to engage primarily in a one-way direction. The communication is from top down, engages primarily in one-way direction, that is downward communication. Personally directs the completion of tasks. That is how the authoritarian leadership communication style is characterized. The effect of authoritarian leadership communication is that productivity is achieved mostly only when the leader is around. If the leader is knowledgeable, it produces more accurate solutions. So for the authoritarian leadership communication to be effective, the leader must be present. And also the leader must be perceived as knowledgeable for such such type of communication to produce desired effect. So this is quite important. And another thing about the authoritarian leader communication is that such leaders dominate the interaction. They are just that domineering, attitude is prevalent in authoritarian leadership communication style. To the democratic leadership communication style, it's all about the following. It involves followers in setting goals. So the democratic leadership communication style involves followers in setting goals. It's not unlike the authoritarian that is unilateral. This is collaborative. Also, the democratic leadership communication engages in two-way communication. So it's not just top down, it's also down up, and even longitudinal. That means from one side to the other side. So it's top down, down up, and you know otherwise. It also provides frequent positive feedback, and this style of leadership communication focuses on interaction and goes ahead to reward good work and uses punishment only as a last result. The effect of democratic leadership communication is that it reduces turnover and increases followers' participation and satisfaction. So the effect of democratic leadership communication is that it reduces turnover, that means people stay longer, they stay engaged, and it increases followers' participation and satisfaction because the followers seem to begin to see that they are like co-owners, or they have a stake in the organization, as it were. The laissez-faire leadership communication style demonstrates the following traits. It allows followers liberty to set their own goals. It also avoids discussion with followers. The laissez-faire style of leadership avoids conflicts and also avoids offering rewards and punishments. It's just neutral with regards to rewards or punishment. Laissez-faire provides infrequent feedback, and also it provides suggestions or advice only when asked. That means the laissez-faire style of leadership communication just provides suggestion advice when asked. The effect of laissez-faire leadership communication is that it reduces innovation, especially when the leader abdicates their role. The key is delegate but do not abdicate. So that's the key, to manage laissez-faire leadership communication. The effect also is that it increases stress when leaders inculcate a sit down look attitude. In the second model of leadership communication, we'll be looking at comparing the interpersonal communication style of leadership and the task orientation communication style of leadership. The task orientation communication style is distinguished by the following traits, according to Johnson and Hackman 2018. Firstly, it disseminates information. It has a tendency to interrupt others. The task orientation communication style of leadership makes demands and most often communicates in writing. The task orientation communication style of leadership engages in rigid, non-flexible style of communication. It also ignores the viewpoints, ideas, and conviction of others. On the other hand, the interpersonal orientation communication style requires that leaders solicit the opinions of the people that follow them. It requires that leaders listen empathetically. It also requires that leaders most often communicate orally, unlike the task orientation where leaders communicate in written form or in ink and pen. in the interpersonal orientation communication style, leaders most often communicate orally. Also, in the interpersonal communication style, and that is interpersonal orientation communication style, the leaders maintain an open door policy. They encourage transparency. They also respect the positions, the viewpoints, the ideas, and the feelings of others. Before we conclude this lesson, let's go back to the reflection that we looked at in the beginning of the lesson, and that the reflection was taken from Esther chapter 8 verse 14, the New American Standard Bible 1995 version. Esther chapter 8 verse 14. It reads, and I quote, "The couriers hastened and impelled by the king's command went out riding on the royal steeds, and the decree was given out at the citadel of Susa." Leadership is mostly a communication-based activity. Being a monarchy, the communication style of King Ahasuerus' government was authoritarian in nature. This informed the method of dissemination of information, especially with the limited technology in those days. This lesson helps us appreciate that a leader is as effective as their message and the channel of communication. When leaders communicate proficiently, they can improve future outcomes of the organizations they lead. Now, to draw the curtains on this lesson, it's important to go over the salient points in the lesson. Leaders who communicate effectively can lead effectively, as the core role of leaders is communication. Leaders cannot but communicate, and that consistently and constantly. Even when nothing is happening, leaders need to keep speaking, need to keep communicating. Leaders succeed to the extent they are able to integrate emotions and cognition. So there needs to be a balance between the leader's emotion and the leader's cognition, and also to know how to integrate the emotion with the emotion of the people who follow them also. Then, thirdly, and not the least, communication style determines the variations in a leader's effectiveness. So, the style of communication of a leader determines the leader's effectiveness, and therefore the ability of the leader to improve the future outcome of the organizations they lead. We've come to the end of not only this lesson, but this course. Thank you.